All right, and welcome into another episode of Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast, episode 19. Teddy, we are here. It is July 27th. The boys are back in town.
Let's
First day of
go.
practice. As this comes out, we are very excited. We've been talking about this for months. How you feeling? Excited to get everything going?
Yeah, man, feeling great. Football. Today's the first day where, it does feel like football is back. Getting everyone back in their buildings, getting practices rolling. They can actually wear pads, not as much as they used to, but still, it's just real exciting. And, we got some exciting news today too. So everything's looking up, at least for today.
Great stuff for the Jets. We're obviously going to go through a lot of the news and notes from players reporting today. A lot of nice stuff that we can get into. And then the big topic today, we're going to be taking a look at some position battles. And there's 7, I believe, that we've highlighted, 7.5, because there's another one that I think we could talk about is a little bit more fluid. But we've got 3 starting positions. We've got 4 backup roles. We're going to go into all of those, kind of take our picks, who we think is going to come out on top, discuss the competitions in general. So we'll get to all of that. But before we do, please make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69, Teddy's personal at Teddy Huncho, I myself at Blake Andrew Pace. Feel like we're going to be a little bit more buzzing these next few weeks and as we get into the season, because there's actual stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Excited to keep that rolling. So make sure to follow us over there. And Teddy, let's dive into it. Some great news came this afternoon. It was funny. Sometimes you just pop on Twitter and it's like the top thing. You're like, oh, this timed out perfectly. Mekhi Becton, Carl Lawson, CJ Uzomah removed from the PUP. All 3 ready to go for first practice. Still waiting on Fant, but seeing those 3 names ready
is huge.
From the get-go. How'd you feel?
We've talked about it, and we I don't know if our last podcast was before or after they were put on the PUP.
I think they had just been put on.
Okay. Yeah. So maybe we talked about it a bit, but we all kind of understand how the PUP list works, and how before training camp it can very likely mean nothing, just because they want to put those guys on there to give them eligibility to get back on. But at the same time, you never want to see it, and especially with guys like Lawson, who were really excited, and a guy like Mekhi Becton, who we know there's a lot of pressure on to be healthy. It was a little worrisome. And so just before day 1 of practice, to get these guys off of that list, I'm assuming they're going to be ready. Maybe they won't be completely full go, but they'll be out doing some type of practice activities tomorrow. It's exciting, and it means a lot for Mekhi Becton, especially. That's the name that I was most excited to see removed from the list, just because of everything we've talked about. I mean, he's the one guy we've talked about basically every episode,
19 weeks.
And then Lawson, it's just good to see that he's off the list, getting ready after missing, the whole season with an Achilles tear. Really hoping he can stay healthy. Uzomah, I was the least worried about, just because, we at least have Tyler Conklin, and I always kind of figured he was going to be back and be able to get back on the field.
Yeah, I'm the same way in terms of like worry. Uzomah was like, okay, he's probably going to be fine. Lawson, they talked about how they were going to stretch him out and really play it patient as they geared him up toward the regular season. And they probably still will do that, as they should. But it was nice to see him, ready to go for practice 1. Becton is, like you said, it's such a revelation, not just the fact that he is ready to go, but then you take a look at him walking into the building and you see some of the photos of how he looks. I think they said he dropped 40 pounds, something like that. Or I don't know how much it ended up being, but he looks fantastic. And there's a before and after picture from his last time that he was interviewing was it the big ticket t-shirt that he had on? Big Bust. That's what it was. Big Bust t-shirt. And you just take a look at that to where he is now. I mean, it's like, okay, he looks ready to go. And if they cleared him, they obviously feel ready for it. And as we'll get into position battles a little later on, that's huge. That's huge for Becton, especially the way everything is working out with Fant still remaining on the PUP.
Yeah, I mean, the only report I really heard, I mean, obviously there was no media availability today from any of the coaches. The only thing I really heard about Mekhi was positive, was that he's he's looking good. The Jets coaches are happy with where he's at. We've heard Saleh say he's been in the building all 40 days, these past 40 days. So that's all good. We should take it slightly with a grain of salt, as I believe that report came from his like medical personnel or whatever his like trainer is, who's helping him deal with his injury. So
Right.
obviously that guy's going to side with Mekhi Becton, but I actually do think it's a woman. I said guy. But yeah, it's just, at least we're hearing positive things after so many, unknowns and negatives. And just to touch on the picture thing, it is funny because throughout the whole offseason, there's people posting pictures where he looks fat, where he looks thin. You never know, like, when was the picture taken? Today, walking into camp, we know that's a recent one, and we know he looks good. So.
Well, and the thing with that is, like, not only is it fun to see, like, yes, this tackle that we believe can be so great is ready to go. I mean, you can dunk on people for days because they've been giving him shit for 8 months now.
Yeah.
And, he's the guy that always said, like, he's going to get you. He's going to get you. He's active on Twitter. He loves replying to stuff and getting, things going. So, look, it was never a situation of we want you to fail, at least, for the two of us. I don't know, there maybe are some people out there that just don't like him, but it was just like we want to see it. We want to see you, and then you can rub it in everybody's face. And that's where we're hopefully at. Obviously there's still practice.
Got to see him on the field first for sure.
And
but
you got to get him into action. But just from where we were 6 weeks ago, feel a lot better heading into the
first
start
step
of
has
camp.
been made.
Yep. Some other stuff, just, Uzomah, speaking of him, great shirt with the Zach Wilson Time Person of the Year. As we move through into some other stuff that we saw today, I'm trying to think if there were any quotes or players that got me really excited. Braxton Berrios bleached his hair. I saw that.
I know. I saw a few comparisons to Ken from the new Barbie movie.
Oh, nice. Yep.
I believe that's Ryan Gosling, who my father always says Blake looks just like.
Yeah, and he's the only person that does that.
I know.
He's the only person that
I don't
that
see
in
it
the
so
world.
much anymore, but when you were clean shaven a bit. Yeah, I'm not sure anything else. I mean, today was just a day of a lot of pictures that I saw, a lot of videos. Our boys Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, they're best buddies. Yeah, pretty fun day. I would have loved to be there.
It's always nice to see kind of everybody get back into town. I was trying to think if there was one other thing I swore that I saw talked about, but I can't. Clemens, rookie Michael Clemens, just showing up shirtless, fucking yoked.
Oh, hell yeah.
So he's on a mission.
I'm rooting for him, man. He's a guy I'm rooting for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing. So a couple of signings. I just wanted to talk about this one. That's what it was. JMU alum. Of course, I went to James Madison University. Rashard Davis signed with the Jets to the team today. Electric
wide receiver.
Yeah, wide receiver, punt returner, fast as lightning. He dominated in the USFL most recently. I don't know.
Nice.
Ted was a big USFL guy.
Big USFL guy.
I think he led the USFL in punt return yardage this past year, but Super Bowl champ with the Eagles previously, won a natty with the Dukes. So that was just fun for me. I mean, obviously they've got enough wide receivers and you'll have to see, but it's cool to see that, they brought in a few extra guys, made a couple of cuts, recently signed Rashard Davis as well too, is what I'm seeing. So just, kind of those transactions, getting everybody to their numbers for camp. So then we can then weed them down, but bring in some competition for sure. The only other thing that I wanted to take a look at from The Athletic, because I just thought it was an interesting tidbit. It was from Connor Hughes at The Athletic, who is finishing up his time there. He finishes off in probably about a week or so covering the Jets for The Athletic, but he was talking about the adjustment that the Jets made to their offseason program. And the quote that, really stood out to me was, high school senior year gym classes have more intensity. And really what it went into is that the Jets kind of devoted this new section of their staff to injury prevention. And what that detailed was really dumbing down, slowing down these off-season activities. And that goes for the entire month of May. That goes for the entire month of June. Now, on the one side, extremely smart, because as we've seen, teams can get to preseason week 3 and their season is done. The Ravens last year, all the injuries they had heading into the regular season kind of crushed their season. And for the Jets, they had to deal with injuries last year, had to deal with a lot of injuries over the years. It's okay. How do we now make sure that we can walk into September ready to play week one, but also healthy enough to play week one? So on one side, you love that, but on the second side, it's also like, well, you've got a young team, a lot of new pieces, three, rookies that you're trying to get integrated into the offense, especially the last two off seasons or last three now with COVID. You weren't really able to have a full off season program. Helpful or harmful, that's up to you. We'll find out. But I didn't know if you had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really worry me in terms of a lack of development, and that mostly comes from a place of, I guess, trust in the way our coaching staff thinks, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
that mistrust is poorly placed, but um, basically what I think about, especially in these OTAs, when we're talking May and June, we're talking guys in shorts. Number one, in my experience playing football, I know that normally coaches will take any opportunity to increase the physicality if they can. And even if you're out there wearing shorts, they'll want to make the linemen go full go and block each other and all these things that should technically be illegal. Um, but I think that the importance of like technique and getting these guys to understand, not just to approach the game with physicality and intensity and things like that, but to be able to maintain their technique while they're doing those things. I think that kind of dumbing down the practices in that sense, especially in OTAs, can have that effect where technique is what's prioritized as opposed to just
Okay.
looking fast, giving a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I view it. Also, I just training camp in general has taken such a step back since the collective
From
bargaining
like the
agreement.
2-a-days.
Where, yeah, I mean, you're talking you had longer training camps, you had multiple practices a day, you had more practices with pads, more practices where you could hit. Whereas now that's really dialed back, and there's only, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but there's only a handful of really like full pads, actual having some kind of contact practices.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really worry, because I know that's what the entire NFL is kind of moving to, and that's what they're all doing, is kind of removing that aspect from practice. Obviously, you have to do some of it, which I'm sure the Jets will in training camp. But I don't know. I don't really worry about the intensity of May and June personally.
Yeah. And the other side of that too, yes, that the last few years, you weren't able to have a full session either, with COVID and not being able to have certain guys and a certain amount of people in the facilities. But that probably also gave them an opportunity to say, look, what fat can we cut out of this program? How can we adjust it so when we can have everybody in here, we're as efficient as possible and not really taxing ourselves? So just thought it was when you compare it to a high school senior year gym class and the follow-up sentences, it's not even senior year gym class, at the beginning of the year. Everybody's already into their colleges. Like that was the follow-up sentence to it. It's like it's the last month of senior year of high school. Um, which,
Maybe not
Teddy,
the best thing to hear, but
well, yeah. Teddy
I
was a
won't worry about
tryhard
it
in
yet.
high school gym class. So he was a gym class hero.
Who wasn't, man? Who wasn't?
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like that's most of the housekeeping stuff. Like I said, it's a couple of signings. Guys off the PUP is fantastic. Still waiting on Fant. Hopefully that's not too long. Um, but yeah, let's go right into our position battles. We're gonna start off with the one that's kind of 0.5. Well, let's go over all of them in general. We're gonna take a look at the wide receiver 2. That's kind of our 0.5 because I think it's a little bit more fluid. The three starting positions that we have to figure out are left tackle, cornerback, and then outside linebacker. The four other ones, the reserve roles, we've got reserve edge rusher, couple of names in the mix there, reserve interior defensive lineman, 3 names there, reserve safety, and then reserve wide receiver. So that's what we're all going to go into. Let's just start right off with the hybrid one because Teddy brought this up before the show. And I would expect, at the very least, that as they enter camp, and I believe you agree with this too, that when you take a look at the receivers of Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Garrett Wilson, that'll probably be the order they start things off in. They'll give the seniority to Corey Davis. They'll make Garrett Wilson kind of earn his role, I guess, as the number 2 wide receiver, which is kind of what we're seeing a little bit with Sauce Gardner as we get into his a little bit later down. But the idea is Corey Davis will probably be a starter to kick things off. How long does it take for Garrett Wilson to go there? So when you take a look at that position battle, I guess, between Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson. What do you think is the timeline for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. And I think that a lot of it comes down, I mean, it's obviously twofold. It's how quickly does Garrett Wilson, if and when he takes that step and really kind of shows up and establishes himself, when does that take place? And basically, if he comes out of the gates and he's making crazy plays all training camp and he's dominating our cornerbacks and he's easily the best receiver out there, then I'm sure it'll happen sooner than later. And I'm sure by week 1, he'll be the guy. Of course, that's very possible that it doesn't happen that quickly for him. I think it's very, very expected that rookie receivers take a few games to kind of get their feet under them. I think even looking back at like Justin Jefferson, who had the best rookie receiver year ever, basically 2 years ago, even he didn't even really play his first 2 games, So you look at things like that. And so I would lean more toward, hey, week 1, at least Davis is still going to be the guy. The other side of this is obviously Corey Davis. Are you going to be playing well? Are you going to be showing the coaches that you should be out there, that you're a reliable guy? You're going to get rid of the drop issues. Because if he doesn't seem like he's playing as well as they want him to, then that's another reason to get Wilson up there. So it's an interesting thing. If I had to put a stake in it right now, I'd probably go to say that Davis will start the year. And then, within the first 5 weeks or so, Garrett Wilson kind of takes over that job. Obviously, all 3 of the guys are going to be out there a decent amount. But I don't know. You draft Garrett Wilson at number 10. You hope he can be out there sooner rather than later as a starter.
Yeah, it really comes down to how much in the trust tree is Corey Davis with the Jets coaching staff. And you would say, at least in my opinion, that after last year, your job isn't solidified. Like, yes, he's still going to be on the roster. He's still going to be on the field a ton because he does bring certain things that the other receivers can't, and especially run blocking, which I want to get into in a second. But I would assume when you take a look at just overall talent, Garrett Wilson will probably get out there, and he doesn't have the relationship that Zach Wilson has with Elijah Moore, with Corey Davis, with Braxton Berrios. Like, he doesn't have that yet. But what he does have, and one of his best things to his game, is improvisation. And he's a guy that can move around on a broken play, and Zach loves to improvise. And if they can start hitting things off, this could speed up a lot for their connection. And so, to me, man, I feel like I sound like such a Corey Davis hater sometimes. I would love to see. I feel like you said, you draft the guy at 10. You would assume he's going to be out there, like as the number 1 and number 2. Like, how many other receivers that were drafted in this first round aren't going to find themselves on the field as the top option? Like, next year for Atlanta, Drake London is really their top receiving option, so he'll be out there. Jameson Williams, if he's healthy, when he can be healthy, they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he probably fits in as that number 2. Exactly. Chris Olave with the Saints. You got Michael Thomas coming back, but probably the number 2 there. And then the 5th one. Oh, it's the guy. Yeah, Treylon Burks.
You have him and Robert Woods, but
and they just traded away AJ Brown,
in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I even after like saying my prediction, I don't want that to be the case. If I could choose, best case scenario is that Wilson just plays his way into that spot sooner rather than later. But I do think that when you just look at the history of rookie wide receivers, I don't think if he kind of comes out week 1 and 2 and isn't really on the field as much as you'd hope for, having the stats that you'd hope for, I don't think it's time to panic yet. But then once you get into that 3, 4, 5, you do really want to see him at least contributing to the team. You know what I mean? As opposed to just kind of being, if he comes out there and does nothing, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think the other part to it, like we said, I wanted to get into a little bit, was the run element to this. And he's really the only big-bodied receiver out there when you take a look at the roster.
Corey Davis.
Corey Davis is, sorry. And it's not that, Elijah and Garrett are tiny, but they're definitely on the smaller side. And the Mike LaFleur prioritizes receivers that can help block and aid in the run game. Now they have upgraded tight ends so much where that's not going to be as big of a need, but you wonder how they're going to
That's
share
true.
that time load between them, because you want Corey Davis still out there, especially to help run block. But maybe you can kind of start to weed him out if the tight ends are really holding up well. So, I saw a report that they're thinking about putting Ruckert even back to like a fullback type role just to get him on the field a little bit. And then you're
I'd
adding
love
in
that.
another blocking guy. And I don't know. I think it my prediction, I'm gonna give it to Wilson to start the season. I just don't think you're gonna take a guy that high who's got
Yep.
a ton of talent. Corey Davis is a very solid receiver to have on your team, but if you're going upside and you're really shooting for things like the Jets are going to be this season, I think you got to have a lot of pop out on the field, and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson do exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you convinced me. I already hate my prediction, but
You
what's
can always
nice is
change your
that
predictions.
I'm going to. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say I'm gonna say at least by week 3, Garrett Wilson will be the guy.
Okay.
But what's nice is that we named this segment Jets position battles to watch. So while we're
Yeah.
giving our predictions, these are things I'm excited to watch in training camp, and
Oh, yeah.
how this kind of receiving core all looks, who seems to be getting the looks from Zach Wilson, things like that. I'm really intrigued. So yeah, I mean, and kind of like Blake said at the beginning, at the end of the day, all these guys are going to play. Braxton Berrios is going to play. I think you're looking at more of the more likely scenario is that Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, and even throwing Elijah Moore, even though I think he's going to solidify himself as the one, at least for this year. I think all of them are going to be hovering around similar snap percentages, especially when you consider what you're saying about the run blocking with Corey Davis. So maybe not the most exciting position battle from that aspect, because at the end of the day, they're all going to kind of win it to
Right.
some extent. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. So I'm glad we got that in.
Definitely. No, and that's a good one to talk about. I kind of looked over that. I wanted to talk about Denzel Mims versus Jeff Smith, but we're gonna save that one for last.
Two of my
Um,
favorites.
kind of like what you were just saying with wide receiver. These guys are gonna go on the field. This next position battle, it's a battle for left tackle. The consolation prize is you're going to be the right tackle. And you've got George Fant, who played left tackle last year, really made a name for himself in the organization in terms of leadership and production on the field. Obviously, still on the PUP, hopefully lifted up soon. And then you've got Mekhi Becton, who we're just saying is returning. He looks great, cleared to do football activity. So you assume, hey, practice one, Becton's going to be there at left tackle. So that adds a really interesting element to that, where I thought the entire time leading up, he's going to come back in and be that right tackle. Now that Fant is still waiting to be cleared to play football, Becton has a real nice chance to steal this if he's ready to go. So take me through your mind with that one, because it changed within the last 24 hours.
Yeah, you're so right. And when we look at George Fant versus Mekhi Becton, who's going to be the left tackle of this team, there are so many little intricacies and things at play. Obviously, you start off with the injuries. I think we all kind of expected George Fant to be the one who was going to be out there, and Mekhi Becton was going to kind of struggle to get back in the swing of things. If Becton has the clear lead on that and can show, that his health isn't really an issue. He's able to be out there every day. He doesn't have nagging injuries pop up every other day, things like that. I think it makes sense for this team in the long run to prefer to have Mekhi Becton as that left tackle than George Fant. However, the interesting, or the kind of other side of that is the team has gone out of its way to kind of say, well, we're going to give Fant that shot. He deserves that shot. Which, you do take with some, you take to mean something, just because even when he comes back from, like, does just being injured for the first couple of days of training camp lose your opportunity to play for that spot? I don't really think so.
No.
Then finally, a third aspect of this is Fant at least in some ways hoping to get a contract extension done. He doesn't sound like he absolutely needs it to be done. I've gone on record saying I don't really think it's going to get done this year, but I think that the way this left tackle position falls out has so many I can't think of the word, but it
Implications.
exactly. It has so many implications on the contract because if George Fant ends up establishing himself and he's going to be the left tackle, then why not sign him for a 3-year extension where, okay, we're going to have this guy who's going to be our left tackle for the next 3 years. We'll have Becton on the right and we'll be good, as opposed to, okay, maybe if he plays right tackle, he kind of loses that leverage of being a left tackle. He's going to get paid less. Maybe the Jets would be more likely to want to give him the extension, but he wouldn't want to take the money. Maybe it would just make him more likely to get the extension in general. Like there's so many aspects of all this that it is just so interesting. But the biggest one of it all at this moment is the fact that, tomorrow Mekhi Becton's going to be out of practice and George Fant isn't. We're all assuming that he's going to be out there full go. We'll have to kind of watch and see how that goes. But I don't know. I mean, I've been on record saying that I think that Mekhi Becton is going to be the left tackle, but it all depends on him being able to be healthy. So if he can go through camp with no injuries and really just kind of grab this position back, I don't think that's out of the question.
Yeah, the thing is if Becton didn't have such a terrific rookie season, this would be a little bit easier of a decision to make, and you could really make him earn it. Spend a year at right tackle. If we start to see Fant's play decline or as he gets older, we'll just flip you guys because he's got experience at right tackle. You came out as a left tackle from college, Louisville, right? I think he's a
Yes,
Louisville
sir.
guy. Yep.
Yep.
So, him having such a great rookie season and then his sophomore campaign ending so quickly, it's like, well, we've been so down on him, but the highest that we saw in his first season was very good. And so it's tough. Fant is so important to the team, but the long-term play is Becton. Now, the Jet staff can play it, thanks to Becton's own issues with dealing with the weight and the rehab and all the drama that stirred. They can play into that and just say, you have to earn this now. We're gonna let you play it left until Fant is back. Come back in. Let's see how you do. And look, if Fant starts to take a little bit of a step back when he's out there, and Becton is true as hell at right tackle, you can make that change. Man, it's tough. So if you had to pick one right now, you're going to go Becton week 1, or what are you going
Yeah,
to do?
that's what I'm going to go with. I mean, it's a hard projection just because there's still so many questions. I mean, yeah, we're happy that he's off the PUP, but that doesn't mean he's going to be full go. That doesn't mean he's going to get through camp healthy.
Right.
That doesn't mean they're just going to want to give George Fant that opportunity and, solidify the right side with Becton. But I just think that when you think about why this guy was drafted, kind of the ceiling that you spoke of, even in limited time his rookie year, just being able to really look like a really great player. I think that if he's healthy, which I'm hoping he will be, he'll be the guy.
Yeah, it's tough. If I had to pick, where am I going to go? I've switched it now because when the news came out, I was like, well, Becton's got a real nice shot here. Week 1 starter at left tackle. I'm going to go Mekhi Becton, which is such a crazy
I wouldn't have
crazy
expected that from
change.
you. Watch us just both
Such
be
a
wrong, though.
Well, that's the thing is like if Fant is back Thursday, this means nothing because it's just one day you slide them back into their positions and it's done with. But
Yeah,
how
and
long? Go ahead.
well, for me, I think when we're thinking about like what questions are we excited to get answered in training camp, you want to assume, okay, Mekhi Becton and George Fant are both going to be healthy, are both going to be able to be out there, right? And then it just comes down to how do the Jets want to play this, And I think that's what I'm going to be looking for is tomorrow if Fant's not at practice, is Mekhi Becton playing left, or are they saying, hey, we're going to put you at right because that's where we plan to play you? Are we saying, hey, we're going to put you at right because we want to see you do some stuff, and then if you're really out playing, you'll move to left? Like there's still so many things that just the Jets staff could decide, hey, we said this is what we're going to do, and this is what we want to do. So, yeah.
To me, it seems, based on what I was reading, he is going to start out at left because their plan is for Max Mitchell to solely be a right tackle. He played nothing but it in college, and it seems like he's just going to be at right until Fant gets back. So I would assume that just means that he's going to take over at left to start off, but could change in a couple of days if Fant returns. So that'll be interesting to watch. Good. I'm glad we both went back in there. Look at him getting all that love today. Speaking of which, I remembered the news and notes just now that I couldn't remember earlier in the podcast. Riley Reif, he ended up signing a big time contract with the Chicago Bears today. Someone that had taken a look.
That.
Dude, if you just had to guess how much money, a 1-year deal, how much would you think they had given Riley Reif?
I don't even know, like 8 mil.
12
the
and
way
a half.
You're saying, I was just gonna say the way you're saying it, I'll say like 12.
It's ridiculous. He got 12 million to go play for the Bears. The Jets weren't even gonna go close to sniffing that.
Yeah, so for real.
I don't blame them. But all right, cool. So we both go back in there. We both kind of had the same timeline for the receivers. I think we're both going to be on the same page with this one as we go to starting cornerback, and it's Sauce Gardner versus Bryce Hall. The reason this one is a competition is because in padless workouts, in the offseason programs, Gardner was behind Hall. Saleh said that would remain the case until Sauce does something to change that. We know Sauce is the best cornerback on this team. It's just your classic rookie situation, earning the job. To me, only a matter of time. What would you think is the timeline for this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that from the coaches that they would, at least in OTAs, put him at 3, give the nod to the guy who's outplayed, where he was drafted, what his expectations were in Bryce Hall. I wouldn't be surprised if the depth chart that's posted tomorrow is Sauce Gardner at 1. Yeah. To me, I would have thought more that the competition was Bryce Hall and DJ Reed, but they took this guy at 4. He's a guy that you took with the 100% sole intention that he's going to be the best corner on your team. If you just watch him play, that's clear. So I don't know. It doesn't really seem like much of a competition to me, but what I am interested in is, number one, obviously you want to just see him go take it, earn it right away, be the clear best player. And then it's also just the dynamic of how are they going to play these cornerbacks, because they have a pretty interesting group. I mean, they got Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Bryce Hall. They got Brandon Echols, who outplayed, kind of his expectations last year. And then in the slot, they have Michael Carter II, So do they play around and ever have DJ Reed kind of move inside and play that slot position to get Bryce Hall out there, maybe keep him outside? Would they ever consider playing a guy like Bryce Hall in the nickel? These are just possible scenarios. If I had to guess, I would say Sauce is going to be the 1, DJ Reed's going to be the 2, Michael Carter's playing nickel. But you never know. And especially with a guy like Bryce Hall, who has in a lot of ways earned his way on the field. Maybe the coaching staff wants to get him out there somehow, at least in certain packages.
Yeah, I think the big thing, I would assume they're going to keep Reed on the outside. He did a little bit of it when he was with San Francisco back in the 2018-19 season. So you could think maybe they'll toy around with it a little bit, but his best play came on the outside with Seattle. And that's really, where he came to earn this contract. So you could tinker with it a little bit, and injuries can always change that plan. And if Hall comes out and he's fantastic and Reed is slipping, they might try to move him around. But I would assume, despite still being an undersized guy, that he's going to be primarily on the outside. But yeah, I just, like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow we look at the depth chart and it says that, Sauce Gardner is the number 1 on the depth chart. So I think we're in agreement there. At the very latest, preseason week 3, like he's not starting the season. Not on the
right. Yeah, I mean, he's got to be on the field, and if he's not, that's a disappointment at the number 4 pick. Like,
scary.
The Jets have even said it for all these guys, for Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and even Breece Hall to an extent. Like, they drafted these guys expecting them to be impact starters from day one, So I don't think I just don't see them. I don't see them like I see them giving these guys the benefit of the doubt. They're gonna get them on the field. Um, even if their play is similar to some of the veterans, I think they want to see these guys on the field. They want to get them experience. So yeah, I think in terms of Sauce Gardner versus Bryce Hall, I'm going Sauce.
Sauce.
Give me that sauce.
Sauce. All right. And then the last starting position we have outside linebacker. Right now, that is Quincy
Do
Williams
we have
versus
to talk
Jamie
about this
Sherwood.
one?
We don't have to. We can just pick where it ends up. I don't
No,
want
I'm just
either.
kidding. It's
I'm
gross.
serious. I'm
It's
not kidding. It's
gross.
disgusting. I would assume, and I think you would assume too, that Quincy Williams right now has the upper hand. There is the ultimate curveball though, and I don't want to just skip to what you put down there. Is like, we're still waiting on Quan Alexander.
Right. And that, just to give everyone a little peek behind the curtain, on our show doc, it says Quincy Williams versus Jamie Sherwood, and there's a spot to put your answer. And I just wrote Quan ?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any strong takes on these guys?
I would assume that they're going to give Quincy the job just because I think he is a little bit more well-rounded than Jamie Sherwood. And I think he can bring a little bit, especially in the passing game. I don't love either option. And that's where I think you bring in Quan. And here's the thing with Quan Alexander. It's not like he is a great option either. Like, he did struggle in New Orleans last year. Like, it's not like, we talk about him as the saving grace for the linebacker position. We just talk of him as
Better than these
something
guys.
something
Yeah.
to throw in, a little bit of experience with the defense. He's been on good defenses, been a leader, been with Saleh. So that's where you kind of just say, if there's a guy that's going to come in and just take a position right away, if he's healthy, Quan Alexander probably ends up being the guy.
Yeah, when looking at these two, Quincy Williams and Jamie Sherwood, there's not really much analysis on their play because both of them are kind of streaky. Obviously Sherwood was a rookie last year. Quincy Williams, at least from what we've seen, seems to have the higher ceiling, the higher ability to make like impact plays, to kind of blow someone up, have a hard hit. But does that translate to just, doing the right things at the right time? We'll have to continue to see if he can improve. I think this is one of those position battles that comes down to, you really want to see one of them separate and earn it for being better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very possible that it could just be whichever one is worse, kind of makes the decision, because one of these guys is just not good enough to be out there and the other's a little bit better. That's obviously not what you want to see. But I do think it's a very likely scenario that neither of these guys really have that great of a camp, and then you're just stuck starting whoever. And I sound very pessimistic. Hopefully one of these guys can establish himself. I would lean the same with you, that Quincy Williams, he got the nod last year. He does make memorable plays, which obviously sticks in our minds as fans. It sticks in the coaches' minds, I'm sure, to some extent. But at the same time, Jamie Sherwood was a guy who was picked with a purpose when Robert Saleh and this coaching staff decided to take him, and Joe Douglas. So, I guess if I had to choose, I would prefer that Jamie Sherwood takes a step forward and earns that spot. But I think the more likely answer is Quincy.
Yeah, I'm going to go Quincy as well, too. I wanted to see, there was one more thing I was trying to look at with those guys, but I'm not going to be able to find it either way. Those are really the three starters there.
And real quick, I'll just throw in, Hamza Nasruddin could also make a play at that position. Another rookie, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
It all starts tomorrow.
Quincy, unless Quan shows up. All starts today by the time this comes out.
Yes, that's true. You watching practice right now?
Christmas. I am. I'm watching
Inside
practice
training camp?
on my TV. Inside training camp.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So those are our three starters. We all pretty much agree the same there. Let's move into some of these reserve roles. One of the more interesting
This is what's fun during camp. The reserves.
Me, the defensive line reserve ones, as we get into those two specifically, are my favorites. We're going to start off at edge rusher. And really the mix of four names that you take a look at: Vinny Curry, Bryce Huff, Jabari Zuniga, and Jacob Martin. And that means the roster locks on the flip side of that. You got Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, and Michael Clemens. So those four are safe. Now, if you take a look at what the Jets did last year, they kept 4 edge rushers on the roster for week 1. So you would assume, okay, probably going to expand that a little bit more. I just don't think they had the right guys in here. And you take a look at the additions they made, it's a huge upgrade at the edge position and even interior defensive line as we go into them next. So you assume, okay, they're at least probably going to add one more. Probably likely when you take a look at these names, they're going to add a second one. So 2 of those guys are, to me, going to be very safe. At the very least, one of them is extremely safe. And then there's probably a chance for a second one to sneak in there, because I do think, if you can go 3 deep with talented players, and there are talented players, like 2 guys that are getting cut are good edge rushers, but 2 are going to end up being a little bit better there. When you look at those 4, do you view it the same way of like 2 are going to make it? How do you feel about them weeding down to their final, depth chart or roster?
So, just to say it again, looking at Vinny Curry, Bryce Huff, Jabari Zuniga, and Jacob Martin, I think the clear first guy on the chopping block is Jabari Zuniga. Just hasn't really made an impact since being drafted in 2020. Kind of part of that draft class that's going to seem not so great, sooner rather than later, kind of regardless of what ends up happening with Mekhi Becton. The picks after that were just not good enough.
We're going to talk about 2 more of them in a little bit.
Yeah.
The death of 2020.
So yeah, I think when you look at these edge rushers, he's kind of the first to go. I think that Bryce Huff is a guy who I think he's definitely going to make the team. He played really well last year when he finally got his opportunity. Injuries have obviously held him back, and if he ends up kind of continuing to be dealing with injuries, maybe that's kind of a guy we cut bait on just because we're sick of dealing with it. But if he can stay healthy, I really hope he can, become just a contributor on this defensive line. And kind of what you were saying, last year we had 4. This year, I do think it leans closer to 5 or 6, just because, your guy, John Franklin Myers, he's going to be able to kind of play both roles, inside and outside. And I mean, they have 16 defensive linemen on the roster at the moment, something like that.
Yeah, they got a lot.
So it's going to be hard to cut. It's going to be hard to get that number down to like 9. I think 10 or 11 is a more realistic number. So looking at this list, I think Jabari Zuniga is the clear outlier. And then if I had to cut another one, I guess I would lean Vinny Curry, just because Jacob Martin, they did give a contract to, and I like Bryce Huff. But what do you think there?
Do you think there's a scenario where they would keep 3 of those guys? That to me is a lot of edge rushers.
I guess so. Lawson, Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Clemens. Yeah, I mean, that's tough.
7's a lot.
I don't know enough about how NFL rosters are created, I guess, but
yeah,
it
that's
would be
the thing.
hard.
We were talking about this before.
Then how many inside D linemen are you taking?
Exactly.
And Franklin Myers can kind of be that.
He opens up.
Forth. Right.
Franklin Myers' position versatility opens up it one roster spot, because it's a half of like, what also are you going to be able to add in while he's at the other position?
Yeah, and it seems like let's just kind of bring these inside guys into it. Last year they kept 5 guys on the roster. It seems like you have to have at least a 2 deep there, and then Franklin Myers as kind of the bridge guy. So I think that allows for 5, maybe 6 edge rushers. So yeah, you're probably right. I mean, 2 of these guys got to go. And I guess if I had to pick right now, it would be Zuniga and Curry. But really, I mean, there's a pathway for any of these guys to go. Jacob Martin doesn't have a lot of guaranteed money this year. Wouldn't be a big cap hit. Jabari Zuniga, clear, just hasn't been good enough. Bryce Huff has had his injury concerns. And then, Vinny Curry is a guy where if these other guys establish themselves, he could be the odd man out.
Yeah. Yeah. I view things the same way as you. To me, one of the toughest cuts at the end of the day, like, I know you think, and I think he's a tremendous guy too, but when you take a look at the numbers and how you have to get the roster down to, like, if they need to keep more guys at offensive line or at safety or at some of these other positions where you're just like, what are we going to do? Here's the other thing. I don't think they're keeping 3 quarterbacks this year. The more I think we're going to get so much Mike White in the preseason, and then they're just going to send him off, which is crazy. But
Yeah,
uh, go ahead. You
you
have
can
something on that?
finish. Well, I
To
was
me,
just gonna say, I do think usually the goal is to have one of those three guys be a practice squad player,
right.
and not be a
Yeah,
53-man
exactly.
guy. Um, but
An
you can finish
embarrassment
your
of
thought.
riches, an embarrassment of riches at the quarterback position for the New
Mike
York
White,
Jets.
dude. Everyone thinks Mike White is such a goat.
So I was reading something from Connor Rogers today where it's like they're really going to put Mike White out there a lot this preseason because they're going to try and move him for something, which is unfortunate because he's a fun guy. But I think the Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco duo is probably here to stay.
Yeah, I
And when
agree.
you need these other positions and you got tough roster cuts, you can't have that third guy there. And he's not, if he's on a practice squad, somebody's going to take up Mike White just because of the flashes. But my point I was trying to get to with that is I do think at the end of the day, like Bryce Huff is going to be one of the toughest decisions for this team to make. Now, I think they'll end up probably keeping him. I'm with you. I'm going to say they're going to keep 6 edge rushers here. So adding in Jacob Martin and Bryce Huff. I'm putting Jacob Martin there just because like I love him and I'd hate to be so excited about a guy coming in and then him just getting
Right.
axed before
Your
even
love
week
for
1.
him has transferred over to me too. Like
Good.
I just like want to see him play. I want to see him out there.
So one thing that I was thinking about with him, because we were just talking about how Becton gets this kind of early jump on the left tackle position, and Jacob Martin is not going to crack anything of those top 4. You would hope that he is a guy right behind Carl Lawson, but he's going to have a really nice opportunity because Carl Lawson just feeds in that wide 9 spot. And if they're really easing him in, that's Jacob Martin's bread and butter. So they're going to have him out there in the wide 9, probably making plays, racking up sacks. So to me, I think, like you said, it would be an easy tie to cut um, based on the money, but I would assume you bring a guy in with the money. It's kind of like taking Sauce at number 4. It's like you're going to get rid of him in 2 months. I don't know. So I agree. At the end of the day, the cuts for me at edge are going to be Vinny Curry and Jabari, which leaves you with 6 deep of Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, Jacob Martin, and Bryce Huff.
I'm with you there.
Perfect. So
Look at us
we're
agreeing.
I know. Look at us go. Let's move on to the interior guys because you brought them up a little bit. Like you said, they kept 5. Right now, the 2 absolute locks, Quinnen Williams and Sheldon Rankins. We also know on passing downs, John Franklin Myers is going to be on the inside there. So when you take a look at the other 3, you've got Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard, and Jonathan Marshall. Now, to me, if they're keeping 6 at edge, they might just go too deep here at the interior defensive line. So one of those guys is probably not going to make the fit. To me, when I look at the 3, before I send it over to you, Teddy, Solomon Thomas, like Jacob Martin, brought in to play this defense, has a history with Saleh back to their days in San Francisco. He plays a different position now. He was an edge rusher when he came out of the draft, moved inside with Las Vegas this past year, and now is going to be an interior guy, kind of a guy that I see as if John Franklin Myers is on the outside for some reason in a passing down and you need a pass rushing interior guy, like that, Solomon Thomas's bread and butter. He's not really a run stuffer. He's going to be in there on the passing down. So he's one guy I look at and I say the relationship, the positional value and what he's going to bring to the team as a guy right behind John Franklin Myers. I think he is going to be safe. And then you also the fact of like the Jacob Martin thing, like you just brought him in. Are you going to cut bait with him already? And then that leaves me down to choosing between Nathan Shepard and Jonathan Marshall. And when you take a look at the elements that they bring, I would almost say that you're going to keep Jonathan Marshall because of his run stuffing ability. And that's something that, you're getting out of Quinnen, but you want a big guy in the middle to just disrupt in the run game. And it's tough because Nathan Shepard has been spoken about as an all-time favorite player for Robert Saleh. So this to me is like a real big conundrum. Like, what are you going to do here? Maybe I'm overstating the Solomon Thomas thing. Maybe they just keep it with Jonathan Marshall and Nathan Shepard. Right now, I'm leaning Solomon Thomas and Jonathan Marshall make it, and Nathan Shepard gets the axe. How do you kind of view the interior?
Yeah, I mean, this is like it's like a pick out of the hat kind of thing for me.
Okay.
And kind of looking at our roster locks, we currently have Quinnen Williams and Rankins. I kind of think Rankins should be thrown into that group. I think he could
Interesting.
very well end up being being the odd man out and getting cut, you know,
Hmm.
maybe not. But it's just hard. I mean, everything that you kind of just explained, all of these guys kind of have that reason to stay. When you look at, Solomon Thomas has that relationship with Salah, was on the 49ers with him. Nathan Shepard has been a guy who's, been on the team for 4 years now, contributed at least somewhat, hasn't been the greatest player, but hasn't been the worst. And then Jonathan Marshall, we kind of like Jonathan Marshall and think he's gonna. Is that your guy, or is that Jacob Martin that I'm confusing him with?
Jacob Martin's my guy. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. So maybe Jonathan Marshall's the odd man out. But I kind of like Jonathan Marshall. So if I had to pick, I'd say Nathan Shepard is the guy that gets cut.
Mhm.
But I really wouldn't be surprised if it was Rankins, to be honest with you.
That's interesting. I like that you throw Rankins in there as a potential. I wasn't even considering him. So wait, so who were your two that you say are going to stay? Is this our first disagreement? I missed what you ended up saying.
Well, no, I'm saying that I think Shepard will be the guy who's out,
Gotcha. So
which
we
gives you
agree
Quinnen
again. Yeah.
Williams, Rankins, Solomon Thomas, and Jonathan Marshall. But you just look at kind of shit. Shepard's been able to hang around the past 4 years.
Salah loves him.
Yeah,
Salah
exactly. I
loves him.
mean,
It's tough.
obviously he's only been around since last year, but yeah, I don't really know. I mean, this is one where I'm just really excited to see like who can kind of elevate and establish.
Hmm.
And I also do, at the end of the day, at least for rundowns, does this make sense what I'm saying? No, I mean, basically just at the end of the day, period. Don't you think that the line is going to be, Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, and Quinnen on the inside, and then, pick your poison edge rusher of which
Yeah,
guy you want to rotate in.
definitely.
So, you put Franklin Myers kind of in this group of inside D linemen, and then maybe they only go too deep with him, and they keep 6 or 7 edge rushers
Wow.
outside of him.
Yeah.
Well, 5 outside of him. So a lot can happen. I think this D line is obviously the hardest to get our place, like to get your predictions off, because there are just so many guys. But I think it's like the number, other than left tackle, it's probably the number one thing I'm watching, just in terms of like, how does this all fall? Where do these guys land? Who's going to be, in that rotation? Because
Hmm.
they're going to want to have
Shuffling everybody
a few versions of who they're going to have out there. So, like we said, I guess I'm picking Nathan Shepard for the pick, but
to
I
get cut.
really, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But any of these guys could be on the chopping block just because of how much talent there seems to be in the room.
Yep. Teddy and I keep agreeing. So winners of that one will be Solomon Thomas and Jonathan Marshall. Obviously, I think that's one where we agree. It's you have no idea how that's going to go, just based on what they bring to the game. And I guess you don't want to have too much of the same guy out there. So then at the end of the day, we're just guessing that Shepard gets the axe. Two more reserve spots that we want to go into. Just as much as I don't like talking about starting linebackers, reserve safeties aren't necessarily my favorite topic, just because I think it's a little thin back there. This is one where I think if they invest a little bit more in the defensive line, this is one that's going to get cut, probably 2 guys. So out of that list, it's Ashton Davis, Jason Pinnock, and Will Parks. Davis, kind of like what we were mentioning earlier, the 2020 draft class, not great.
He is probably the most hated Jet, if I had to pick one,
Yeah.
just
Is that
among
a
fans.
consensus thing or a you
Yeah.
thing? Okay.
No. I mean, I don't really have anything against him, but he just hasn't really like done it yet. But if I had
Right.
to say, because this team is very likable now. It's not
Yeah.
the same team as it was in the Gase years and before, where there was a lot of guys that people kind of hated. I think like Connor McGovern and Ashton Davis might get the most crap talked about him.
Hmm.
But yeah, I said it when we talked about the defensive ends, but it really does seem to me that this 2020 draft class is going to be gone basically.
Before the
Um,
start of the season.
yeah, I think so. So my opinion here is that Ashton Davis gets the cut, unless he can really, like exactly what you wrote here, unless things drastically change, because Pinnock is that guy who he's a rookie. and I think they're going to want to give him another year. I don't really think he's a candidate to be cut. And then Will Parks is a guy I kind of like. I think he played a couple games with the Jets last year, two or three. And then there's also Elijah Riley, who they signed to play. So, it's just interesting. It's kind of a hard one, but I definitely think kind of what you said, there's going to be more cuts than elsewhere here because of the way that the rest of the roster is constructed.
Yeah, see, to me, I don't know. I think two of these guys could get moved on from. The guy that I want to spend time talking about, though,
I think you're correct there.
You said it about Davis. Like, I don't want to add anything more onto that. Pinnock, like you said, hopefully they're going to give him a second year. But Will Parks really came on strong at the end of the season after coming over. I think it was maybe as late as December, even when he joined the Jets, or maybe right at the end of November.
Yeah, only played 3 games.
Two, but was kind of nice with it. Those 2 starts. That was the thing, is he came on. I think he was PFF's top graded safety over the final 3 weeks of the season. It was like, where the fuck we get this guy from? But he was a cornerback, switched over late November, finished the year strong. Obviously, we don't expect him to go out there and just be this all-time player at safety, but I think he's earned the opportunity to continue that and ascend up there. So when I look at the 3 guys and who to me is going to land as the final reserve there, I'm going to go Will Parks. Ashton, I agree. I think my prediction, I guess, if I was to say, and I'm stealing what you said, because you said like this is the end of the 2020 draft class. I think by the time we get to week 1, this team will not have Jabari on it. This team will not have Ashton Davis on it, and it will not have a guy that we're about to talk about next in our final position battle. But there's 3 names there where I just say, come week 1, not going to be on the team, whether they're cut, whether you're able to get anything in a trade value. I don't think so, but it just 3 for 3 won't be on the team.
Yeah, and of those 3, I think Ashton Davis is the first to go. I really do. I mean, he has just been terribly disappointing. So
crazy.
Yeah, we'll see. He's all right on my Madden, but that's about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Teddy, I think we're just going to agree on everything here as we get to our final one, and that's wide receiver 5, Jeff Smith versus Denzel Mims.
Everybody 2 of my favorite players.
Everybody, and that's
was not even really a joke.
I hate that. Yeah, you did have you really held on to the Mims background. I remember on your phone for a while. You still actively right now. So it is July 26th. We're recording this. Is he still on your fantasy team?
I think so. Yeah, I'm not dropping him. What if he becomes
hilarious?
Stud?
It's hilarious.
What if he gets picked up by some team with no receivers?
And while I'm going to put this out there, because everybody, I'm assuming, if you've done part of dynasty leagues, the rosters are a little bit expanded. Ours is not that deep of a of a bench there. So Teddy definitely
he's still there. He's projected for 3.74 points week 1.
Oh,
good. Probably be closer to 0.
For what team? Yeah, what team is he going to be doing that for? So Jeff Smith, Denzel Mims, everybody was kind of pushing that up after the draft of like, oh, look at Mims is showing up. He's in shape. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see in a few weeks with Mike White, where we're really just trying to bump up this trade value. I don't think it worked too much because you get to OTAs and minicamp and he's still behind Jeff Smith in terms of reps and who's getting the work in. So when I look at the 2, to me, Smith has a specific element to his game where Mims is kind of just, he's well-rounded, but Smith is a very fast receiver, and he can add a little bit on special teams. He's got experience as a gunner and a returner. At the end of the day, when you're looking at who's going to be your wide receiver 5, I want a guy that's going to do a few different things. This is one of the easier ones for me to decide, and I'm going to give wide receiver 5 to Jeff Smith.
Yeah, I think the special teams argument is really the argument to go with, just because that's kind of classic for that wide receiver 5 position, is they want to have a guy who contributes on special teams. Obviously you do have Braxton kind of slotted in as that wide receiver 4, and he's going to be on special teams. So maybe that changes up the thinking, but it's kind of hard to say. What I do wonder, and I feel like I should have looked this up, but I didn't think about it just now. I feel like 5 wide receivers is kind of like the go-to number when people think about who's going to be on a roster. But I feel like last year we definitely had more than that, because we had Davis, Moore, Crowder, Keelan Cole, Braxton, and Mims at least. And then sometimes
Hmm.
Jeff Smith was out there, maybe because of injuries. So the precedent is there for them to keep 6 guys. I wouldn't be surprised if both of these guys end up staying, but it is a little tougher because how long are you really going to hold on to Denzel Mims if he's not going to be a guy who's getting out there? When you think about the guys ahead of him, it's going to be a tough time getting on the field. So
Hmm.
even if he doesn't look horrible, even if he's not making a ton of mistakes, it's just kind of like, when are we going to get you out there? And will he be a practice squad kind of guy? I don't really know how that'll all work. I don't know if other teams are going to be dying to pick him up. But you would assume maybe they'd take a flyer if he was on the practice squad. I'm not really sure. I don't know. This is a tough one for me. I don't want to cut either of these guys, but I'll disagree with you. I'm giving it to Mims. I think he's back.
Really?
No, I like, it feels wrong to say that. Just because Jeff Smith does play on special teams and Mims doesn't.
That's what you're using a wide receiver 5 for. He's
what
out
I
there in emergency situations and he's going to be on your special teams. Like, you need
right.
guys that are going to do those things.
And last year, obviously, injuries were an issue. So maybe my thinking of last year is a bit clouded by that. But even when Mims was in the doghouse, even when he would mess up and get a few penalties and he would go back in the game, it would just never be for passing plays. Denzel Mims would very often just get thrown in to help block on a run play. And we've talked about the better tight ends. Maybe that won't be as needed to have big body wide receivers. But it's not like even when he was in the doghouse last year, it's not like they completely erased his role. They just kind of erased his receiving role. So, I don't know. Then you look at the fact that they already got Moore and Barrios and Garrett, who are a little lesser bodied guys. And then you would only have Corey Davis as the big bodied guy. So that kind of makes me lean towards Mims. This one's really hard. I mean, they all are. I'm excited to see how these all go down. But just for my guy, I'll stick with Denzel. But I am a big Jeff Smith guy.
Happy for you.
Thanks.
I gotta get you have to die on that hill. You do. Yeah.
Exactly.
To me, the other part that I just want to acknowledge is N'Keal Harry, first round bust for New England, went for a 2024 7th round pick. And it's just if he went for that, do you think you're getting anything for Denzel Mims?
Yeah, and the thing with N'Keal Harry is he was disappointing, but he at least was on the field and
he's a starting wide receiver.
3. Right, exactly. And he never got that touchdown, or maybe he got one, but
I think he
did at least have
12.
some receptions and stuff. I mean, Mims is a guy who his contributions have been few and far between. It's just really hard to justify him sticking around.
I'll give them a ton of credit for building up the trade value and trying to build up the hype. They did a good job with it. It got a lot of people bought in.
I mean, we traded Chris
for a couple of weeks.
I guess
Chris Herndon trade is an all-time W. Yeah,
I think he played 2 snaps or something for the Vikings, or 2 games, something so crazy, and we got a 4th round pick for him.
Insane.
Yeah.
Oh well. I'm glad we had at least one to disagree on. So let's just
had to do it.
Recap the position battles real quick. Wide receiver we counted as a half one because both of those guys, Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, are going to see the field a lot. But we think Wilson, you said at least by week 3. I think start of the season will probably be out there. Left tackle, we both went Becton, which is just a crazy one. Sliding.
Not what I expected from you, Blake.
I think he's going to get the upper hand, and if he's good to go and he looks good, it's you're going to take that away from him. That's what he's going to be, the franchise left tackle. That's what we drafted him at 13 to be. Sauce Gardner, Bryce Hall, we both agree Sauce going to be out there probably as soon as the day this podcast drops. Outside linebacker, we both say probably Quincy Williams, but hopefully maybe it's Quan Alexander. Edge rushers, we both say if we have to cut 2 guys, it's going to be Jacob Martin and Bryce Huff that stay. Vinny Curry and Jabari Zuniga are going to get the axe. Interior defensive linemen between Solomon Thomas, Nathan Shepard, Jonathan Marshall. We say Solomon Thomas and Jonathan Marshall keep their jobs.
Sleeper pick. Shepard. Rankins get cut.
I like that. Yeah, I like that you put that out there. Sleeper. And then reserve safety, Ashton Davis, Jason Pinnock, Will Parks. We both agree Will Parks probably keeps it. You're going to hold out a little bit of hope there for Jason just because he's still a young guy. And then wide receiver, our big disagreement. I go Jeff Smith makes the roster, and you're holding on, dying on the hill of Denzel Mims.
Yeah. I'd love to go through the roster gymnastics is something I really haven't nailed down.
It always
I
changes.
don't have like
That's
a
the
good
thing.
feel for, okay, if we keep an extra guy here, we got to cut an extra guy here.
It's
It's hard
crazy.
to kind of do that math in your head. It's kind of like assigning yardage values to all the receivers when you project Zach Wilson for 4,000 and you're just trying to make it fit. Maybe it's an exercise we can get into. I don't know if we want to be that deep, but maybe sometime we could try to project a 53-man roster. Maybe next
We could
year.
do that. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
we talked about these bubble guys, I think, enough
yeah.
to kind of cover where we think cuts are going to happen. And there's going to
And
be a
there's
lot. I
still
mean, what do they got? 90
90.
something guys, 90,
90,
on
yeah.
the dot. So, yeah, a
And
lot
they're
of
gonna get
cuts
down to
happening in camp.
53.
A lot of guys that we're going to be hearing a lot about. Fans are going to be getting behind, and then you're going to say goodbye to them.
Well, and that's
it's
the
inevitable.
thing. And at other positions we haven't even spoken about, like 2 running backs are probably getting the axe. I would assume you're going to keep Tevin Coleman probably as the 3, just because I think he's a coach at this point, but you're going to have some other guys getting the axe there. What are they going to do at tight end? There's going to be a really tough decision with who's the guy from, he's going to be one
Kenny
of the toughest
Yeboah.
decisions
I'm
to make.
very intrigued because it really does seem. I heard this on another podcast. I think the path to maybe somehow keeping 4 tight ends is kind of what you mentioned
Isn't
before,
that crazy?
and getting Rucker into that fullback role, cutting Nick Bawden, so you don't have a true fullback, but you have Rucker who can do it, and then maybe that can justify Yeboah. Realistically, I think Yeboah ends up as a practice squad player. That's an interesting one though, but it's hard. I mean, 4 tight ends, does that seem realistic?
It's a lot to keep. Maybe if you're going to be that run heavy, maybe it's not, but that's what it comes into, is like, what position then are you taking away from?
Right. Another aspect to this that I kind of thought of midway is that, obviously, knock on wood, we don't want anything terrible to happen, but some of these guys that are kind of written in the 2 deep will get injured,
no team walks into September
right.
with a clean 2 deep.
So, yeah, I mean, that kind of might make things a little simpler. We'll see guys that we because it does seem like there's guys you expect to be on the team and then there's not enough room for. And I think injuries is kind of that equalizer that kind of, these guys are injured, so we can sign these guys. But yeah, this is what it's just fun that we're like having this conversation and like training camp is starting. So we're at least going to get like at least the beginning of answers, maybe not real answers yet, but we at least have things to talk about as opposed to just talking about.
We've been talking about hypotheticals for 2 months now, and now we get our answers over the next month. So it's like we said before we even got onto the podcast. I woke up today just in a better mood because I was like, football is here. The Colts are reporting to camp. I'm getting excited about every team out there. My all-pro linebacker's name went from Darius to Shaquille now.
Yeah,
so that's
very interesting.
That's interesting. We got news around the league. Julio signing with the Bucks. It's just like we made it through the very boring 2 months of it, and it's about to get very exciting. It's gonna be very exciting here on our show. We're gonna really have a lot of fun as we go through into the preseason and regular season. So I'm excited.
Yeah, and just before we wrap it up, I guess that's kind of what I want to say is just like we started this when March. We're on episode March. 19. And it's been a blast. We've had a lot of fun doing it. I think I have personally.
Definitely.
But it's just like, it's exciting. Like this is our first training camp. It's going to be our first season. It's going to be our first time really, podcasting while the season's going on and there's real things to talk about. So it's an exciting time, and I hope you guys come along for the ride.
Definitely. It's gonna be fun. It's only gonna get better because, like you said, we have stuff to talk about. So let's wrap things up. I appreciate you guys. We appreciate you as always for listening to another episode of Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast. On Twitter at NYJ_Chasing69, Teddy at Teddy Huncho. I'm at Blake Andrew Pace. YouTube page is the same as the Twitter handle. We will be back next week with hopefully a lot of great news. Zach Wilson dropping dimes all over the field. You know, I'm going to put out one last thing. Star of the preseason is just going to end up being Braxton Berrios. I just think the relationship, he's going to be making plays all over. And I think
he's going to be the star of the real season, bro.
Yeah, the real season. He's a wide receiver 4 is going to just burst onto the scene. I love it. But no, it's an exciting time, and I'm excited to keep doing this with you, Teddy, as always. So thank you for doing this, and thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next week. Peace.